Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast, part three of the House of Ashes episode. So, yeah, we've just finished the second third of the episode. A lot to cover, a lot of developments. Yeah, Jack, what do you think of that chapter then?
Yeah, very, very action packed. Definitely more what I was looking for in terms of um, essentially what was happening, the intensity. The characters were obviously starting to pick out what was actually going on. And yeah, overall, I think it was a solid part two.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree. I'm just going to say it off the bat. We came up with some theories at the end of the last part. I went more down a blood and war, making the gods angry kind of avenue. You went for vampires and eclipses, and I think you hit the nail on the head, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. It really was. I think towards the beginning of part two, you see Salim encounter one of the bat monsters, and he falls to the ground. He has to like jab it through the heart. And as I saw the sort of the stake go through the sort of the bat's chest, and then it keel over and die. I was like, this has got to be vampires. Like this has got to be holding true. And then I'm pretty sure there was a picture I found later on, and it was called Staked. And I was like, again, stakes and vampires. It's all starting to add up.
Yeah, and
And
obviously we don't have much information about the eclipse thing, but I'm not sure about you. I found a clue right towards the end of that episode of a onyx or a little jewel.
oh right, yeah,
And it says they symbolize eclipses. So I feel when I saw that, I was like, okay, Jack could have some proper evidence here. But yeah, no, it was a really solid episode. Like you say, a lot more action packed. I was mind blown by it. Somewhere I'd like to start, I want to get a few negatives out the way first, which, let's try something a bit different, and then, we can cover what we liked about it. As much as I love that episode and I'm really liking everything so far, there were a few problems I encountered. Uh, I found that last part to be very glitchy. Um, so, as you're well aware, because I did mention this to you, I had to restart on two occasions.
yeah,
One was both when I was playing Salim and I was with Jason. So the first one was when I looked at one of the tablets, the one titled Comrades. Um, I looked at the tablet, saw the vision, the premonition, and I couldn't back out. So I was just stuck looking at this tablet.
oh blimey, okay, yeah,
So I had to completely come off the menu. Luckily, it like didn't set me back too far. But the second one is a very frustrating one. And if you've played the game and you're listening to this podcast, you probably will experience something similar, because I looked up help on how to get around it, and someone posted it on Reddit. I commented, and someone replied who had the same problem as well. Um, when you're looking around these cells and you're with Jason and you're playing as Salim, you look at the final Hodgson entry. There's eight of them, I believe. I think this is part eight. It's in a cell, and you read it, you look at the movie, and then Jason's blocking you in the cell, and he won't move. A bunch of people have had this problem. I tried everything. I tried budging him. I tried waiting in the corners, hoping he'd follow me in further. I looked back at the clue a few times. He's just stood there. So, although it didn't affect my game where I had to completely restart it, I could chapter select and I had to go back a few paces. Um, and I had to go all the way back to when Nick and Salim meet. Um, Not Nick, sorry, Jason and Salim meet again. And it just knocked me back about 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, which was just a little frustrating because, I wanted to crack on and it felt tedious going back through a bit I've already just completed. So yeah, there were a few glitches I encountered there, and I found them very frustrating. But honestly, still a very good game. It's just, I feel I have to mention them.
yeah. And to be honest, I experienced something similar. I'm not sure if it was the same segment, whether it was in the cells, um, but Yeah, there was certainly a moment when you was it was Salim and Jason, and for some reason, like it's not even like Jason was blocking me in, but as Salim, I couldn't move for like a good 10, 15 seconds. I was thinking, oh no, I'm gonna have to back out and go to the menu. And then luckily he just randomly started moving. It was almost as if where a cutscene had finished, um, the characters were sort of still immobile because the game thought that there was a cutscene going on or something like that. Um, but yeah, as I say, they started moving around again. I was sort of like, oh, phew, because you really don't have to
Yeah.
back out on these games because you're trying to immerse yourself into the horror of it, but also the story and obviously the choices. So
I
yeah,
was going to say the immersion thing was a bit frustrating because you're on this flow, you're just completely looking at it, and it does, ruin the immersion a little bit when you have to back up to the menu and restart and then backpedal a little bit. It's I remember that one time you were mentioning when you had an escape room and one of the machines faulted and the guy had to come in, and it just kind of ruins the experience a little bit. So,
yeah,
no one likes to see it. And I think it is a very fixable problem. Like, I think the game should be play tested a little bit. And, we've all played old video games where you have a companion with you and they don't do what they're supposed to or they block you in. And I think it's very basic knowledge that, could be avoided. But, obviously, I'm sure it'll be patched in the future or it'll be something that, hopefully doesn't happen again. But yeah, but so what parts did you like about it? There was obviously a lot of choices that episode. I'm not sure if you're content with your choices that you made, if some have worried you.
Well, I'll say this now that I've got two characters killed.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. It was an idiotic decision on my part. I clearly overthought it. I mean, do you want me to go into it and sort of spoil it or
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, obviously, if you've just played House of Ashes and all your characters survived, this is how you can kill some characters as told by Jack. So yeah, I mean, far away. How did it happen?
and for the completionists out there, I did get an achievement for it. So it's not all bad. It's not all bad.
Okay.
Um, so the segment you've got Eric, Rachel, Jason, and Nick. They've got the bats after them. They're slowly retreating. You have that segment where Rachel can go on the gun or she can flee. I mean, I chose to flee because I thought that if she stayed on the gun, that she might have got crowded out and got killed. So they are fled and Nick's ahead of the group, and you get this choice, and it's all refers to something you do earlier on in the game, where you can either put the tripwire in the middle of the room or to the edges of the room. Now,
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
so I put them. I didn't realise that there was a tripwire at the edge of the room. I thought that they simply put dynamite on the pillars and therefore that it would detonate from a remote place. So you play as Nick, and you essentially have a choice. Do you run down the center or do you run by the walls? Now, my logic in this was if I choose for them to run down the center and then the dynamite goes off, the pillars are going to come in and flatten them. So I told them to run by the walls. And so,
So did you stick the tripwires on the side then?
yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
when,
because I
yeah,
stuck them on the side as well, but I obviously never got this choice to run because I went on the gun personally.
yeah. I'm not sure you didn't get this choice then, where to run down the middle or to run down the side.
So I gunned some of the bats down, and then we did run down the hall. I put them on the side, but there was no choice. It just literally we ran and we got to the end, and then the bats went in, and then they triggered it, and it toppled on them. I never got any choice of going down the side or middle. It just did it for me.
So maybe if I went on the gun, then this would have been avoidable. But yeah, essentially. So I was like, okay, well, I'll make them run down the side, and then as soon as I said that, I then saw like a little cut towards dynamite and the tripwire to the walls, and I was like, oh fuck, sort of. But anyway, Eric and Rachel run into it, bang, they're both blown up, and the next thing you see is sort of Nick or Jason going past, and then there's just Rachel lying there, charred to pieces. And then yes, that's you do get an achievement for that. I forgot what it was called, but
Oh wow, that's really interesting, and I guess it makes sense because Jason and Nick wired them up, and I think that might be why I never got a choice because I gunned them, and then we went in. I think I was playing as Rachel, I believe, and Nick warns you, "Oh, stay to the center or run down the middle." And because he warned me, I never got a choice. It just sort of was a cutscene that happened. And I guess, yeah, because it's you, you ran in straight away. Maybe it was like you had to make a choice and it was a 50-50. But that's really interesting because Rachel and Eric, possibly the two main characters, right?
yeah, I've killed him off. I've managed to
So
kill him off.
that's really interesting because you're going to have quite a unique story on your hands now, and so I'm going to say all five of mine are alive, and we're going to have a very different ending from each other, obviously. So
Yeah, and I suppose it falls back to a segment earlier on in the game when you run into Clarice, which was surprising to me. I know that you run into Joey again, and he's sort of morphed into this vampire. Clarice, it's obviously still early stages. She's sort of spewing her guts up, and you have this whole segment where there's this chasm, and you can sort of you have this rope, and as Rachel you swing across. And now in this situation, you could either swing the rope back for Clarice to swing across and join you, or you can just walk off. And because I'd looked at a lot of the secrets and it was saying that, if you become infected, you become one of them essentially. I was like, well, I don't want her to stick with Rachel. So I'm just going to keep her sweet until I've swung across. And then I'm going to leave her. So that's what I did. But did you do that something different?
yeah, I did. Because I was aware that a lot of the clues we're finding is saying overexposure to the monster. Because I know some of them have uh for example, like the bites in their neck. So obviously the bite probably does it as well. But they say breathing in the or being around the saliva or just being overexposed to these bats can infect you. Um, but yeah, and also it's worth pointing that we saw Joey as a vampire. So I'm wondering if it can revive the dead as well, since we did technically see Joey die. But maybe he didn't die. That's a whole
Yeah.
other avenue we can talk about. But yeah, with Clarice, yeah, I was like, I was aware, but I wanted to be nice the whole time because I'm aware with these games, it's often the case where if you're sympathetic, you'll see that character again. And I'm not taking any chances. So I threw the rope back to Clarice, but it didn't matter because she swung and fell. Now, we don't see her die. The official notes on my butterfly effect says Clarice fell into the chasm. Now we know that Rachel fell before, and Clarice maybe fell once from a much higher, point.
Yeah.
So, the golden rule in horror: if we don't see them dead, they're not dead. So it could be that Clarice comes back, and it could be that she sees Rachel, and my fate might hang in, her hands. So I'm happy with my choices, to be fair, but that's another thing, like I completely forgot about Clarice as well. It was so cool to see her come back. Um, but yeah, that was another choice there.
Yeah, and so in a way, that's why a part of me is glad that Rachel's dead in my thing, because if Clarice does come back as a bat monster in some sort of way, she would want revenge against Rachel. So the fact she's not there anymore, like I suppose that story thread has come to a close, I imagine.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but there's also Nick. Like, I don't know where Nick is in your gameplay at the minute, because he has a moment where he encounters. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, but the dude you play as at the beginning of the game, who's also a vampire now. And in my gameplay, Nick has been taken by one of the bats and just sort of somewhere else underground. So I'm a little bit nervous as well that he could actually become exposed in the end. I'd just be left with two at this point.
Yeah, Nick for me was interesting because there was the scene where he was with Eric and Jason at the start of this chapter, and then he threw a grenade. You can choose to be cautious or to run to Joey's voice.
Yeah,
Did you choose to be cautious in that scene?
yeah,
Yeah, same here. So you see the Iraqi general, and then yeah, you go slow, you see him, you shoot, and then there's a grenade, and then Nick gets separated from the group. Now I can't remember how, but for some reason I thought he was by himself, and then for some reason he reunites with Jason, and he's with Jason for a big portion of the game. That could be me being wrong here, or that could be me having missed something, or that could just be a weird glitch where two characters randomly reunited without telling us. But yeah, so obviously I've got all my characters alive. There's this interesting scene that I'm not sure if you had where Nick, Jason, and Eric are together. Nick wants to light up a cigarette and he can't find his lighter.
yes, yeah,
And then he clocks on that Nick is the other guy. Now I had a scene later on where Rachel comes back. They all reunite, and yeah, for some reason, this is a choice that kind of frustrated me. Eric came back, and you could either choose to be cold or welcoming. So I chose to be welcoming because it's like I'm not going to be cold. I'm happy everyone's back together. And then in response, she kisses Eric on the lips, and Nick's just still there, like pissed off. And I'm like, well, maybe rightfully so. I'm not sure, but like by welcoming, I didn't think she would go and do that. And yeah, they break out with this big fight, and it's a bit weird. I'm not sure I was a fan of the scene. I get emotions are high and stuff, but I felt the choice I did. I didn't really have a clear indication it would lead there.
yeah. I can't remember if I was like cold or welcoming, but in my game, I don't remember her kissing Eric. I remember her giving a hug to Nick first and then to Eric. Um, and then shortly after that, Eric goes, "Oh, it's him, isn't it? I know it's him." And then it was the chance was either to be solemn or to be something else. I can't remember what. And I chose to be
Yeah, yeah,
that there was, yeah, it is him, there is someone else, and then they seem to get over it pretty quick because then they're running away from the bats.
yeah. And that's another point I want to mention as well while we're talking about the whole love triangle. There's the point where I believe it's I can't remember who the character is. I think it might be Rachel who's getting held. Oh no, it is Nick actually. Nick's getting held by the man who comes back from the start of the game. I forget the fella's name.
It begins with B, doesn't it? But I can't.
Balatu, isn't it? Balatu.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, so he comes back as the undead, which I felt was like really interesting. The minute I saw his feet, I'm like, oh, it's him. He's back, and he's fighting Nick because I chose to use a crucifix rather than fire at him,
So did I.
and it didn't do anything.
Yeah. I thought,
And
oh,
Eric comes in to save Nick. Now, like as Rachel, you can choose to leave him, and I assume if you do, he will die there. I chose to save him, but Nick is very much there. Like now, we should go. So Nick is definitely the more evil of the two, the more selfish that wants just Rachel to get out of there. He's often made comments like, "Oh, it's a shame he didn't die back there." It's very petty.
which is interesting to me because obviously at that point Rachel's already dead. So
Yeah, definitely.
in that scene for me, it was Nick who was, yeah, with Balathu and he was like clearly getting strangled or whatever. Salim and Dar were sort of fighting off in the middle of the room against all of the bats.
Yeah.
I don't know where Jason was. Maybe he was there as well.
Jason for me got dragged off first. He gets dragged off really early and then eventually meets Salim again.
Yeah, so that probably was the case for me as well. But I know that I thought at that point, oh, Nick's dead. Like, I thought he was going to get throttled or whatever. But the next thing you know, he's like sort of on the floor, and then a bat picks him up and sort of dives with him down into the underground. So that's what I mean. I think that Nick could come back later on. I mean, the curator said he is still alive, but he could be in.
Yeah, actually, I forgot about that. That's the last time I saw him as well. So I haven't seen Eric and Rachel for a while as well. Because the end of the game is very much Salim and Jason take a big portion of it.
Yeah, it was the same with me as well.
Yeah. So on the big fight scene where that all happens, did you have anyone get injured or infected at all? Because I had a few tallies of people getting absolutely massacred in that scene. No one ever died, but I definitely got some injuries.
I don't know. I don't remember injuries. I know Dar definitely got killed, but obviously he's not a playable character. He got sort of
Of course,
swamped
yeah.
around by 4 or 5 of them, but I don't injuries. I don't think so. What do you mean by that?
So I'm gonna look at my butterflies right now. I had a scene where Joey, no, not Joey, Salim, I don't know why I said Joey, Salim sees Rachel on the floor getting hurt by one of the bats, and then you also have a giant bat jumping at you, and you have to choose which one you want to shoot.
Oh, right.
Now I
Okay.
chose to save Rachel and shoot the one that was about to get her, so Salim took a hit.
Right.
And yeah, so Salim's got an injury, and Nick also has an injury. Now, it's on the same butterfly path as Nick found Joey's medical kit in the tunnels. I'm not sure if you found the medical kit.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully that patches them or someone eventually. But also at the end of the chapter, it didn't matter because Rachel was the last one standing, and it said that the one of the creatures, I assume it got her in the neck, but Rachel's very much infected in my game now.
Wow. Oh, okay then. So, yeah,
So
I mean, this is
yeah, it's going to be interesting to see
completely,
what happens with Rachel.
yeah, this is thrown up a completely different dynamics. Obviously, where they've got killed off, like you've had choices in there that I didn't have. And so, yeah, you've potentially got infected characters now. There is probably an opportunity later on to save them. I mean, you've still got them all alive, right? At least. So,
Yeah, yeah.
no, that is interesting.
But also, yeah, talking about the different characters and the choices here. So we very much saw at the end of it, we have Salim and Jason are in a story together, which is a fascinating dynamic. Like I said, it very much comes to like Balafu and the prisoner at the start of the game, because Jason may be the most hostile one. And something I will say about Nick, I know I criticized him in the first chapter. He definitely got the depth I wanted in this one, where he talks more about the past incident where they thought a girl had a bomb, and he's clearly going through a bit of PTSD. And I know he was shaken before, but they touched on it a lot more. So he is more than just one of the people in a love triangle to me now. He very much
Agreed.
has a nice, good bit of depth to him, and I really enjoyed that from him. So yeah, but then it turns out that Jason, who I very much was a little bit of a fan of at the start, um, admittedly, yeah, I killed a shepherd with him because I thought, yeah, that'd be interesting to do. It sounds kind of like him, but he is very much becoming that pig-headed American. I get this is just after the events of 9/11, and he is very much that symbol of the paranoia. And he probably hates the Iraqis more than anyone in the character list so far. So I find the interesting, the dynamic between him and Salim that we're currently playing very fascinating. Salim's this level-headed character who just says, "Yeah, I don't have any beef with you. Let's stick together." And they're working together, but even the curator mentioned at the end of the chapter, have they buried the hatchet, or will it only be solved if a hatchet goes in someone's back? So I'm wondering if a betrayal happens at some point, and maybe that choice we made earlier of me shooting the shepherd, maybe that affects it. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds between those two. I'm not sure how you feel about that.
Yeah, it played out the exact same for me. So, I mean, obviously we've made different choices, so maybe this is one of the choices where it always goes this way. Um, but yeah, although that, yeah, you've got sort of this American figure in there that's against it. Um, I still, I still feel that the game developers themselves will offer enough choices in the run up to the end of the game for you to almost win him over in a way, and for them to all sort of unite and work together, because they really are drumming home this theme of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, possibly there is a choice of betrayal in the future, but I think that by that point, the story will have almost conditioned the players enough to maybe save Salim or save Jason if they're in sort of any predicament.
Yeah, definitely. Also, just based off of the choices, because I killed the shepherd with Jason, you didn't. I just want to see if it's not a massive choice. It's more just a dialogue option. But you know when the Americans and the Iraqis have each other at gunpoint before they become a little bit of a team.
Yeah,
There was this moment where Jason said, "I'll shoot you all" or something, and then for me, Salim said, "Well, at least it won't be in the back this time." I'm not sure if you, because obviously you wouldn't have had that.
no, I didn't know.
I wonder if it's just a generic dialogue instead, or if they just cut it out completely. But I quite like that. It's a tiny feature, tiny little intricate detail there, but I quite just like that little dialogue from Salim there. So another little story arc which is happening, or not story arc, just clues that you can get, is this whole thing which we didn't really mention in the last one. I don't think so anyway. Was the Hodgson Expedition,
Yeah, that's
talking
right.
about these archaeologists and travelers who went to the thing previously, and you can find these clues about their previous adventures and stuff. They very much cover stuff you already know, but it is still a little interesting feature to look at. Did you manage to find all the clues? I believe there's 8 of them, that maybe more that I haven't met yet.
I know, yeah, that I know there's certainly 8 of them, but I feel like I might have maybe missed a couple. I'll have to check my secrets in a bit.
Yeah,
I
I've
feel like,
definitely missed one, number 5. I thought I
yeah,
was really far out, but it's past me. I'm not sure. There were points actually where, what I like about this game, and I'm not sure if the previous ones had it, is it very much tells you if examining something will examine it, or if it will examine and then go to the next part of the game with the constant arrows. It's got like a different X point when you highlight
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Because I very much in previous games have suffered to missing clues because I've advanced the game. This one did a very good job, even though that didn't stop an idiot like me who still accidentally hit X too quickly. And I was aware there was clues around that I completely went past because I accidentally advanced the game. Uh, Most notably at the chasm where you play as Nick, I believe, and I went and fixed the radio before I saw a bunch of other stuff in the tents. But no, that's another interesting little layer as well. But yeah, I'm not sure how you're doing for pictures and secrets and stuff if you're being thorough with clues, because as we discussed earlier, there's a lot more clues in this chapter.
There are. I'm definitely being, like, throughout this entire game, quite forensic, and I know that we spoke about it before, that I know that I've definitely missed a clue back at the farm towards the beginning of the game. And again, it was one of those things where you walk into a building and you see a door open and you think, if I go in there, that might trigger a cutscene. So I'm going to carry on down here and have a look. And then what happened? It triggered a cutscene. So there's a complete room that I've missed, that obviously holds a secret because you sort of told me about it. But
Yeah, we had a little discussion, and in chapter 1, you were definitely a lot more thorough than me. You got an extra picture, which I completely missed as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to play back and see like where a picture's passed me as well. But as for secrets as well, because we identified that I had 6 and you had 8, but when we identified that there's one that you missed that I had, that meant there was 3 you that
yeah,
you had that I didn't. So yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that.
yeah. And to go back to that scene where you're playing with Nick and Jason in the chasm, and you said that you fixed the radio, there's like 3 or 4 secrets over the other side of the chasm.
Yeah,
So I think what I initially did is I walked around the radio and I picked up like this mug and moved it, and then that revealed something. But instead of going to the radio, I sort of explored over the other side, and there was like 3 other things.
mm,
Can't remember what they were now. I think one of them might have been some like another tablet. One of them might have been a Hodgson Expedition. I really can't remember. But in terms of those expedition ones, I'm pretty sure I've missed 1 or 2 because I remember sort of seeing part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and then next thing I knew it was like part 7, part 8. So I'm gonna have to look back and check just in case I have them all, and I'm just sort of there's a lapse in memory. But yeah, I do. I really do appreciate what they're doing with them as well. The whole movie reel feature part of it is something that I didn't expect. But to have those little breaks in the game where you can see what's happening with the archaeologists instead of having to read everything, it's a welcome addition to this particular game in general.
definitely. A lot more because a lot of people aren't fans of just constant reading the clues. I'm all for it, but it definitely was a lot more eye-catching to see they've made movies with it, and even with the Explorers with Hodgson, and you've got this new like refreshing British accent that's in it. We were talking about the voice acting before, and I think, for example, you've got Jason, who's like this typical American soldier, and it works really well. You've got the Arabic from Salim and Rachel when she translates, and then obviously you've got this British narrator through it, and I think it blends very well with the curator as well, which is another point which I really enjoyed. Yeah. So another thing I wanted to mention is obviously we talked about settings a lot before. We've got a load of new ones, for example, caverns, and I just wanted to mention I was really breathtaken by the scene with the pits with Rachel. So
Yeah,
we all knew she probably wasn't dead because we didn't see her die. Major character as well. But that whole scene where you're being chased by the splash and you're in this absolute pool of blood and there's skulls everywhere. And then you see the evidence of the 2 people who went missing from the 70s that clearly were there as well. But I thought the whole setting and scene for that was absolutely stunning. It's probably my favorite part of the game, location-wise, anyway.
I have to agree. And I know I was saying in the previous part that sometimes just adding some audio can really ramp up the sort of the world that you're in, the atmosphere, and just the sheer terror that something's about to come towards you. So I remember taking that particular bit pretty darn slowly. I was keeping an eye out for like clues and stuff. So I was like looking out for the little light, but I was also actively avoiding the areas where there were splashes. And after a time, when you can start to hear the splashes come behind you, and it's almost sounding like it's getting nearer, I'm sort of there thinking, should I just stand still or should I just start speeding up to get to the other end of the pit? It was
Yeah,
really well done, and I've got to say, sort of to build on the point I said earlier, it reminded me of Until Dawn, where you play as Mike and Sam, I believe, and you're wading through this pool. You've got all these sort of weird looking rocks, and you're in this cave. So I think they have taken inspiration from that. I'm convinced of it for this game.
yeah, definitely. And that whole pit scene, it really gave me a bit of Tomb Raider vibes as well. I know there's one particular game where you were in a very similar situation. Yeah, and the whole game as a whole, there's very much elements of the horror film The Descent as well, which I really like. I think the whole thing ties very well together. And I know how weird it all is that you've got, these elements of gods and there's vampires and then there's Akkadian empires and stuff, mythology. But, I think someone might debate that that's too much, a bit like maybe Little Hope, someone might say that did, but I still think it works really well. I don't really care that you've got vampires in this weird world with mythology, and then the gate of the underworld. I think it blends really well together.
Yeah, it makes a change as well from the previous games. But I was going to ask you, so looking at your current theory, looking at sort of how it's developed since the last part, do you think you've got a handle on what's going on now, or do you think that there's still a couple of revelations or a couple of things to find that will add to more maybe the mythology of the
Yeah,
beasts, the origins of them, something
I
in
still
that?
think there's other things to find. For example, I'm not sure what makes someone a vampire versus what makes someone undead like Balafu. Sometimes some of them are creatures. Balafu is just as he is. Um, I don't have the answer to why that is. So it'd be interesting to find that out. I'm not sure if you know the answer to that one. Um, Obviously,
No.
there's the whole thing you mentioned with the eclipse that could play a part. And the thing I mentioned as well with, the ground opening up and then something happening with, blood. There's a lot of theme. Like, there's a whole butterfly dedicated. One of the bearings is called blood, and it's keeping track of who's bleeding. And I have a feeling that might play a part, although that could just be a red herring, and it might just be the fact that, they're injured and they need healing or they'll get infected. But yeah, how about yourself? Are you pretty confident you know what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose really what this part did is confirm my original thinking in terms of the sunlight, in terms of the fact that they're vampire based, whatever these things are. Certainly, obviously, we've not had this bit yet, but I still reckon that there's going to be another eclipse in this game. I think people will get out, you'll think it's all fine, and then there'll be an eclipse, and the bats will come out and start roaming the desert. But yeah, to what you said about what makes the undead and what turns them into bats, yeah, I think there's still some digging there. It's quite clear that the UV light, and this is why I'm sort of gutted that Eric's dead because that would have been blown up with him. The UV light really helps with killing these things because I know there was that sequence where he was about to do an autopsy and he brings this UV light out and then stuff, I don't know what it was, just started flying out of one of the bat monsters that was dead and presumably sort of disintegrated or whether it went somewhere else, I don't know. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's a couple more little pieces that need putting in to see the whole picture.
definitely. And that's actually another criticism I forgot to bring up about the game. The UV light, obviously a powerful tool, especially when he used it on Joey, where he pretty much went in flames straight away. For me, when Rachel saves Eric, which I got in my playthrough, she uses the UV to kill one of them with it as well. And when Jason and Eric are holding the doors, there's three of these bats trying to get through, and a lot of time they're using guns and stuff, and they're using a pure might. And I honestly thought, it's almost like they neglected what the UV light could do. I know there is a point where he picks it up and then drops it, but then it's like he completely forgets the power of it. They're still using guns and stuff, and it's in his back pocket for a few parts of the game. And I'm like, you do realize you could just whip that out and you probably burn them in seconds. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, I felt like the inconsistency of using the UV and not using it is a bit of an issue for me.
yeah.
And
And sorry, go
yeah,
on.
sorry as well. No, you carry on because I had a different point.
Yeah, because there was that particular bit where they was holding the doors, and I think Eric was helping, and then the UV light gets chucked forward. I was fully expecting at that point there to be a choice, like continue holding the door or grab the UV thing. And I would
Yeah,
have
of course.
fully ready to go grab the UV thing, but yeah, it didn't happen. But sorry, what was you going to say?
Yeah. The other thing was another flaw actually, which was one we mentioned briefly, but we didn't mention it in the last episode. Was as much as I am a big fan of these new camera angles, it's very much a lot more third person, sticking behind the characters. I think it is worth pointing out that sometimes in those condensed spaces, it doesn't quite work a lot of the time. So obviously we pointed out in Man of Medan, the camera angles are brilliant, how it feels like you're being watched. It's in the corner and you can fully walk your character down the corridor and you'll see everything. This one, it's often attached to the back of your character, and it doesn't always necessarily work in close quarters if you're going through caverns, or particularly I found in Salim's first scene in the first bit, going through his house was very difficult. I didn't know if I was missing clues because I'm walking through hallways. I'm not sure where I am. So I think maybe the way forward for them is to have a mixture of both, where in close quarters you have your camera that's detached. But if they're in big open spaces, it's brilliant, especially when you're in the big temple rooms. It's nice being able to fully rotate and look at everything.
Fully agreed. And it occurs again in this episode when you're walking in the caves. It's almost like the camera wants to stay behind the character. It's sort of on their shoulder as well. And then you mix that with sort of moving the light around to look at the walls. And yeah, it does get, it does pull you out of the game slightly, because the effects they're trying to achieve of you feeling confined, it doesn't work as much because you're just more aware of what the camera's doing rather than what the environment is supposed to be making you feel.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I completely understand, and it is one of those flaws that, I hope, it does get fixed over time. And like I say, or like I mentioned at the start, obviously I had two glitches where I had to restart and reload chapters and stuff. Hopefully, as we go forward, that doesn't happen again. But yeah, I'm going to be optimistic about it though. So yeah, are there any other points you wanted to cover about the last chapter there?
No, nothing springs to mind. We've gone over the theories. Did you
Just
say
one
there
more
was?
thing, I guess, which was obviously the choice of the air support. We mentioned the eclipse might come into factor, but that's another thing at the end as well. The air support, that's the choice we made right at the start, and it might be a choice that comes right at the end. So obviously, one of my air support choppers got bazookaed and is currently in the ground. So that might play into your hands, that you might have more afterwards. But it might be that I did have a dialogue at one point where Nick and Jason are talking to each other, and then Nick said something along the lines of, "Oh, at least that guy, called us air support. That's one thing he's done right today." So
Yeah,
I am
had,
hoping that, maybe towards the end of the game, it might be a possibility that whoever is on the surface, some get saved by air support, and maybe on your story they won't. Um, it might, yeah, that could be a theory, right? The eclipse comes, they come out the ground, and then air support might save you. It might not.
yeah, that's true. I mean, it would be, it would certainly be different on their part for a decision so early on in the game to impact the ending like that in a
Of
50-50
course.
sort of way. But I do think sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing, because otherwise you'll get into a point where you sort of figure out certain decisions aren't really that important. You should always have the illusion that every single dialogue or every single decision you make should have an impact on the game, whether it's within the next half hour or within the next 3 hours.
Yeah, yeah, of course, definitely. Um, but yeah, so yeah, like obviously, I wanted to mention the fact that Eric and Rachel aren't in your story anymore. Is that something that you're kind of frustrated by, or is it something that you're quite happy to go forward with? Because it's going to have a very different story. You're intrigued to see what comes of it. Because I imagine if you want to go for the platinum and stuff, you'll be doing multiple playthroughs anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, first playthrough, it would have been nice to keep everyone alive, but yeah, as you said, I play these games so much. I play them to death to the point where I need to sort of complete it and then I never touch it again, like I did with Man of Medan and Little Hope. So it doesn't bother me that much. I'm interested to see how it ends, though. The funny thing is once you've had characters die, it gets to the point where you're like, well, it wouldn't bother me if other people went now, because the whole objective of them all surviving is out the window. So in a way, it's quite liberating as well, which sounds weird.
Yeah, of course. So you've got Nick, Jason, and Salim left.
Yeah,
Out of those three, are there any ones that you want to prioritize? Any ones you want to keep alive? Are you going to play it as you just, keep an open mind about it?
I'd like to keep Salim alive. I'd like the one I'd probably say I'm least bothered about is Nick, because I feel like at this point, I know he's got this whole PTSD thing, but now that Eric and Rachel are dead, his whole love triangle story's come to an end, and maybe that's why later on he could end up being infected. I don't know, but I'd say of the three, if someone had to go, I'd probably pick him to go next. Then it would
Yeah,
be
that's fair.
Yeah, then it would be Jason, and then I suppose I'd like to keep Salim alive so that he can maybe, I don't know, see his son in the end or something like that. But
Yeah, he's
yeah,
definitely our star person who we want to keep alive throughout the game. Yeah, the thing is for me as well, obviously I've still got my love triangle in the game, and I'm very concerned that it might be that I'm playing as Eric right at the end and Nick might pull a trigger or something. I'm not sure, but it's quite a dangerous dynamic still having that love triangle. And they obviously ended it on a fight, so
yeah, that they could use that later on. It could be that you're playing as Rachel and Eric's getting
you got to make a
attacked,
choice.
Nick's getting attacked. Who you're going to choose? Yeah. So it could throw up some dilemmas.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm ready to get into the next part. Not sure about you, but in the
I am.
next one, we're obviously gonna have finished the game, right? So we'll fully know how it ends. If there's going to be another big twist, if it's going to be in someone's head again, we're going to have to see. But so far, I have a feeling that it's still on trajectory to be a solid 7 out of 10 for me. I'm thinking, yeah, I'm very much enjoying it. I hope it keeps it up.
I'd say my um, my outlook on it has significantly improved. Actually, um, I think what did I say? Man of Medan 6. I think I said Little Hope 7. But if we're doing half marks, I would probably give Little Hope 6.5. But I'll just round it up to 7. I think this could.
Yeah, of course.
I do think this could finish on an 8. I really do.
Oh wow, okay.
Um, if they get the ending right, there's enough drama. I hope that this next part doesn't have a dip in momentum too much. Um, Maybe that will be the case with me because I've got less people. I don't know, but yeah, I hope they get this last bit right because I think it could be the best one so far, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. The choices seem quite difficult as well. With the whole difficulty thing, I think I'm glad I picked the difficulty I did because the quick time events, although I'm not necessarily failing them, I've only failed one the whole game so far,
Oh, right, okay.
which is where I was playing as Salim and I dropped a door on Jason and he wasn't happy about it.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think I've failed any, but I'm telling you that those ones where you have to spam the button, I'm coming close to failing. And the thing is like I don't know if this is the same with you. I think this one, more than the other games, is very cutscene heavy. So there's like moments where you can be sat there for a good minute, minute and a half, and my hands they start to go a bit stiff and cold, and then you've suddenly got this quick time event that you've got to do, and it's quite
Yeah, no, I do agree.
suddenly find myself going against it. So yeah, I do agree on that. I'm glad I picked the challenging one. Maybe if there's an
Yeah.
achievement to do it on the harder difficulty, I'll undoubtedly do it at some point. But yeah, I think challenge.
Yeah, because you know how you have the little ring that goes all the way around when you press the button?
Yeah,
There are some where I'm pressing them by the skin of my teeth. Like I'm talking a nanosecond more and I would have failed it.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
probably is the right difficulty for me. I can see myself failing a lot of the quick time events on the less forgiving difficulty. But I think I'm happy with the one I made right down the middle. It's not affecting my story too much. But yeah, those ones where you've got to spam and button mash, there are some very close ones. And like I say, there's one I did fail, and it made Jason hate Salim a little bit more. And that could just change my thing as well. You know, like I got the red arrows come down when I dropped the door on him.
Yeah. Yeah. All
But
right
yeah,
then.
we're obviously gonna have to see. But yeah, okay then. So yeah, let's finish part 3, see how it goes. But yeah, happy hunting.
Yeah, you too. Hope you keep everyone alive.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, okay, I'll see you then. I'll see you in the next part.
All right, man.